Viewers, welcome to tonight's Alien TV special report. Tonight, the invisible killer, the zap your brains while you sleep, and possibly the reason people are feeling so crap. The report is made up from several short clips, and brings to your attention just how easily what you consider a great help to mankind, is indeed the slow silent killing machine, and once they increase the power settings, you and your puny small brains will be scrambled just like an egg in the microwave. So sit back, get comfy and enjoy the show. Until the next time, good night from me, Black as Small Tits, and all the Alien TV team. Night now and God bless.
Good evening, bonsoir, and welcome to the virtual press conference of the International Agency for Research on Cancer. My name is Nicolas Gaudin, and I'm the head of communications for IARC here in Lyon. The working group has been meeting to assess the carcinogenic hazards associated with exposure to radio frequency electromagnetic fields and has just finished their evaluations.
Animal studies in which animals had been exposed to radiation from mobile phones or similar types of radiation. There was evidence, limited evidence, of an association of cancer risk with that exposure. We also carefully considered the sources of exposure of populations to radio frequency electromagnetic fields, the nature of these fields as they come from various devices, including wireless phones. So I think with that summary, I'll turn things back to with this type of emissions.
Okay, the reason we're told not to hold the cell phone next to our head is because it's constantly emitting microwave radiation. And as you move it away, you can see the level goes down. And this is what microwave radio frequency radiation sounds like coming from a cell phone antenna. If you live within a few hundred meters of these cell phone antennas, you are exposed to constant microwave radio frequency radiation. And this is 11,000 microwatts per meter squared.
Some of the firefighters were having symptoms of poor health. And these were the symptoms that they complained about: confusion, short-term memory loss, inability to focus, migraine headaches, slowed reaction time, insomnia, brain fog, infertility, depression, tremors, and vertigo. Now you can just imagine how difficult it is to be a firefighter if you're experiencing vertigo and you're having difficulty making decisions on the spot. The firefighters went through some very extensive medical testing, and Dr. Gunnar Hauser in California did something called a SPEC brain scan. And he found that of the 6 firefighters who volunteered to have their brain scans, 5 of them showed abnormal activity that didn't correspond to chemical toxicants that they're also exposed to. And the only firefighter who did not show these symptoms was the fire chief, who was serving as fire chief at 2 different halls, so he was only spending half of his time at this particular fire station. In order for us to be able to have a conversation about this, I think it's really important to understand some key concepts and terms, and this is something I teach at Trent University, so I'm just going to introduce you to some of the concepts that I share with my students as well, and this is called Antennas 101. This is called a cellular base station, and it consists of tower that holds the antennas. In Europe, they call it a mast, so that's how you might be able to see it in the literature. This particular one has quite a few antennas on it, and it's in Toronto, by the way. The third part of one of these cellular base stations is the cabin that contains the electrical supply. Now, these antennas look very different and they have different functions. The ones at the top are omnidirectional, which means they radiate in all directions. And one of the ways that you can think about them is like an incandescent light bulb that simply gives light in all directions. We have some that are point-to-point antennas, and here you can imagine a laser where you beam the laser to another antenna that picks up the signal. And the third type of antenna we have here is called a sector antenna, which simply radiates in a certain direction. And one of the ways to think of a sector antenna is like a flashlight. So when you beam a flashlight in a direction, the light doesn't go everywhere. 3 antennas that are point to point. If we move up, we have some sector antennas. These are the 2G and 4G antennas. And then we have something called a 4G antenna. You can see here that they're much broader than the 2G and 3G antennas. Now, what does 4G mean? It actually means 4th generation, whereas 2G and 3G refer to 3rd generation. These antennas have different carrier frequencies. Here we can see the 2,600 megahertz for the 4G antenna, and you can simply think of these, they're carrier frequencies, they're carrying information, and so you can think of them almost as vehicles or trains or buses or something. And this is the cargo that they're carrying. In some cases, it's movies or data, internet access, text, voice. So this is what the information is that they're carrying. And now we have an example of how these antennas should work. This is a sector antenna, and ideally, this is the type of radiation you should get from it. In reality, however, these antennas have something called a side lobe, which means that some of the radiation is going to be given off in a direction that they really don't want it to go. And if we look at the radiation pattern, we can see here that you have very high levels of radiation at a distance of about 200 meters with this particular kind of configuration, but you also have very high levels immediately beneath the antenna. In May of this year, or last year, the World Health Organization classified radio frequency radiation as a Class 2B carcinogen. This means possibly carcinogenic. And to the lay audience, this sounds like a very wishy-washy kind of designation. But for something to be possibly carcinogenic is actually a very powerful statement. And you must recognize that some of the statements, some of the policies that we have are based on science, but they're influenced by our view of the world, and they're influenced by policy from other countries, and they're influenced by money as well. So there's a heck of a lot of lobbying going on whenever a guideline or a standard is passed, because the industry doesn't want the levels to come down. They want to be allowed to radiate as much as they want. Now, in this, at this conference that was held, there were 2 Canadian scientists who voted on this. One happened to be with Health Canada, so Health Canada is aware of this information. And according to the people who did the study, who came up with the classification, they said they based their, most of their information on the Interphone study, which was a very important study that I'll mention, as well as studies with laboratory animals. I've got Rob Metzinger here, who's going to do some demonstrations. Most people recognize that it's harmful to hold a cell phone to your head, and they will say, but the towers are perfectly safe. So what we're going to do is, while he sets up, is that we're actually going to measure how close you have to get to the cell phone to get levels between 5 and 11,000 microwatts per meter squared. So he's got a cell phone, and he's going to make a call. So what are the levels that you're getting for that radiation?
A distance of about an inch. We're getting readings of about 10,000 microwatts per square meter.
Okay, so 1 inch from a cell phone, we're getting the same readings that we were getting across the street from these cell towers. So if that much radiation is harmful if you hold it to your head, how harmful is it when you're exposing your entire body to it? Most people are concerned about antennas, but they don't realize that there are a lot of devices in your home that also emit microwave radiation, and they emit it constantly. And what Rob is doing here, he's selecting, is it a baby monitor? Okay, here we have a baby monitor. Do you want to move even further away?
At this point, we're reading about 11,000 or 10,000 microwatts per square meter.
Baby monitors, to put an infant next to a baby monitor is probably the worst thing that you can do. The results on was cancer studies with laboratory animals. And this is looking at long-term, low-level exposure to microwave radiation. And when I use the term low-level exposure, I'm referring to levels that are below our federal guidelines. So these are levels that Canada allows all of us to be exposed to. Although this study was completed in 1984, it was done by the U.S. Air Force, and once again, it was a very expensive study, exceptionally well conducted. It wasn't until 1992 that they published the results, so they sat on them for a very long time. And it wasn't until 2005 that it became available on the internet. And what did their study actually do? Well, they took rats and exposed them to 2,450 megahertz. Remember, this is the carrier frequency. And if we compare them to the 2G, 3G, and the 4G networks, we're talking about a frequency that's intermediate. This 2.4 gigahertz, which is another way that we refer to it, is the same frequency that's used by your microwave oven to heat your food. It's the same frequency that's used for Wi-Fi. It's the same frequency that's used for certain types of cordless phones. So this is a very common exposure. The intensity was below the guidelines, and the duration was for about 25 months. These are the results that they got. They looked at various organs and the lesions within those organs. They then looked at 3 different types of cancers, or tumors, pardon me. They looked at benign tumors, primary tumors, and metastatic tumor. And a metastatic tumor is a tumor that migrates from one type of tissue into another tissue. These are their results, and I'm going to summarize them for you. What are the effects of long-term exposure to low levels of pulsed 2,450 megahertz microwave radiation? Well, they found that for the rats that were exposed, as opposed to those that were not exposed, there was a 16% increase in benign tumors, 100% increase in metastatic tumors, and 260% increase in primary tumors. Now, this is very disturbing information, and that's probably one of the reasons they didn't release it right away.
Good evening, viewers. Welcome to tonight's Alien TV special report. Tonight, the invisible killer, the zap your brains while you sleep, and possibly the reason people are feeling so crap. The report is made up from several short clips, and brings to your attention just how easily what you consider a great help to mankind, is indeed the slow silent killing machine, and once they increase the power settings, you and your puny small brains will be scrambled just like an egg in the microwave. So sit back, get comfy and enjoy the show. Until the next time, good night from me, Black as Small Tits, and all the Alien TV team. Night now and God bless.